Hey, Katie Price here, grade transformation expert with part 5 and the final installment of my 2018 exam marker video diary. Here's what I want to share with you today. It's how students can avoid any confusion for markers as to what marks they can be given or what success criteria they can be allocated in terms of getting a certain grade. Because here's what I've noticed. Yesterday, as you can tell, I'm back home now. I got home last night. Yesterday was the final day of exam marking for my unit, and we were doing referee marking. What that means is those papers that were marked, every paper gets marked twice, and if a certain question or a certain unit gets given 2 different grades by 2 different markers, they get marked a 3rd time by a referee marker. There's a certain proportion out of that set of unit markers that get selected to be referee markers, those who mark most accurately and at a reasonable speed, and I'm pleased to say that I have made the cut every year I have marked. We go through all of those papers that have been given 2 different marks or grades for a particular question in our unit, and we have to almost like give a deciding grade. Here's what I noticed is the case for those papers that have sort of come past my desk in that time yesterday, and that is those questions, or those answers I should really say, that have some reason or element of confusion in that response. So it could be just that things haven't been written very clearly or succinctly. More often it's when different points are sort of jumbled together within a response. For example, the students tried to cover a couple of different things, but within the same sentence or within a couple of sentences, it's not very clear which point maybe they're talking about in each piece of writing they have. Maybe it's also that they have tried to give a couple of points, but maybe say that second point hasn't had enough detail to warrant full credit to be given or a certain criteria to be ticked off as achieved. So there's some confusion as to whether they've really got the credit for that second point or whether they have sort of mentioned it, but it's not enough to give them credit. And this is what I see happening a lot with those referee papers. It's just that it's confusing to read and to be able to identify where those marks or criteria have been given or met. So here's my advice for students. First thing is to get to know the exam paper really well in terms of how it is marked and how questions are required to be answered. Because there are some questions maybe in things like history or English where it requires a more longer and extended essay type response. Some questions might be an extended response, but they don't necessarily require an essay format with lots of linked sentences, interflowing paragraphs, etc. So get to know that, because if it doesn't require, a topic sentence, a linking sentence, an intro, a conclusion, it's not going to gain any marks, or it's likely to gain marks unless it's, not been mentioned in the body somewhere. And it's going to waste a lot of time. So the question that I was marking, or one of the questions I was marking, was an extended response. It had 1.25 pages worth of space for students to respond in. And some students responded with more of an essay type answer, and some students just responded with clear, concise points that did have maybe some linkages, but not necessarily, but certainly had the explanation and the analysis for each point, and that was essential. This question does not require, in the paper that I'm marking, does not require essay style answers. So any students out there that are sitting QCS next year, you do not need to write essay style answers even for those 4 or 5 star items. It just needs to get across the certain points. Now, if you remember, the question I had 2 lots of 2 points that were required, and they needed to be explained and analysed. So those students that wrote, boom, here's my first point, here's why it's important or why it works, here's my second point, and then here's my next 2 points, they got the same grades, often a higher grade than those that went into long, lengthy essay-style answers. So the first thing to know is what type of answer do certain types of questions or certain types of papers and certain types of subjects require. I know for example, the WACE exam, for PE, for example, even though it's like a 20-mark question or something for an essay question, it still just needs clear, concise points. It does not need a lengthy essay style, as opposed to modern history, for example, which for their essay questions, they do need that essay format. Check what it is for your state and your exam board and your subject. And then get really good at being able to put across those points in the clearest, most concise way possible. Now, if that isn't an essay style, it's going to require a really good essay plan. And if it's not in an essay style, you still need to think about how to convey those points clearly and succinctly for the examiner to just be able to go, brilliant, yes, they've got that and they've explained it. Brilliant, yes, they've got this and it's valid and it's explained or analysed well. I've talked in previous episodes of this video diary about how to explain and analyse in detail and show that you are doing that. So go back and check those out if you haven't seen that already. It's on the blog at greytransformation.com.au/blog. And so next week, the blog will be back to my nice, short, sharp snippets, tips, tricks, and strategies. If there's anything you'd love to hear about, be sure to email me. It's katie.price@rocksolidstudy.com.au. And until then, have a great week, and I'll catch you soon.